Hi everybody, Father Scott Vanderveer here, responding to a request from some parishioners to talk about conflict. Conflict is something that's part of human life and relationships, but it's been ramped up quite a bit recently. I think that the coronavirus pandemic and the differences that people are having in politics and the financial stresses of having the economy be uncertain and all that's been happening in the world and in society, and then you take all of that and you put the holiday season in with it, and no wonder we're all worried. No wonder we're all wondering how we're gonna do when we get together with our families at Thanksgiving and Christmas. And of course, the pandemic right now is going in a bad direction, and so it might be that we won't be gathering with our loved ones for Christmas or Thanksgiving. And I have to tell you that one parishioner said to me, "Father, can I tell you a secret? I am so glad that we can't get together for Thanksgiving this year because there's going to be so much conflict in our family and I don't want to be a part of it." Can you relate to that? A lot of people can. So let's talk about how we can make a plan for facing conflict, because conflict is going to be a part of life. And there is probably something that you know is likely to get you triggered when shared by people with a different view than you have. And having a plan for what we're going to do when topics come up that are a source of conflict is a really smart thing and a really good way for us to prepare for harmony in the midst of what could be some serious discord. So here's some things to think about. First guideline for managing conflict: don't talk. Listen, don't talk. Now, some conflict is going to involve conversation, but let's just say this. If somebody says something that represents a point of view that you don't share and that you don't like, you don't have to talk about it with them. You could say, "Let's change the subject. That's not something I like to talk about." But you also may find that you'd like to hear a little more about what they have to say. But that doesn't mean that you have to speak. There is a bumper sticker I once saw that sums it up well. Don't say everything you think. It's important that if you find that you have to speak, you have to share your opinions with others, it might be that what you need more is a journal. Because journaling is a way to express what we are thinking in a way that allows us to be completely unfiltered and get all of that energy out without harming any relationships along the way. I'm not a regular journaler, but when I'm really upset and when I'm really frustrated, I always put it into writing. And I was once told by a spiritual director that I don't need to save it. I don't need to keep it in some beautiful spiral-bound edition. The important value of it is getting it out. Get it out. That's what writing does. It takes whatever that negative or frantic energy is inside of us and gets it out. So the first thing I would say is, consider not using words, spoken words, when you're in conflict with someone. Consider writing it out. And if we're not talking, we're spending more time listening. Pope Francis said that when he looks back over his biggest mistakes in his time as a cardinal, as a Jesuit superior, and as a priest, he said it's when he didn't listen. He said, looking back, he never lost anything when he listened. It was always when he didn't listen that he made his worst decisions. Listening, he said, never costs us anything but a little bit of time. And the benefits are so great. If you think about it, the word listen contains the exact same letters as the word silent. If we want to listen, really listen, we can't be waiting to interrupt the person with our point of view. Well, that's all well and good, but because if we are planning on speaking, we're going to be thinking about what we're going to say while the other person is talking. And that is not a helpful way to really hear them. We need to listen. And there's lots of things that people have said to remind us of this. One axiom that a lot of people like is, We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We should listen twice as much as we speak. But one that I like even better is no fish would ever get caught if they just refuse to open their mouth. Don't let anyone put a hook in your mouth. Keep it closed. That is the way to listen, and that is the way to take more time to ponder without jumping into conflict. Now, the second part of my plan when I am facing conflict involves figuring out what to say if I need to speak. Sometimes it is important to engage with someone. And so one of the things that I think is helpful, that is meant to calm us down, because this is the kind of sentence that reminds us of the kind of person we want to be. When someone says something we disagree with, wouldn't it be good to be able to say, that's interesting. What makes you say that? Not only does that show respect to the person who's speaking, you're interested in what they have to say, but it gives you a chance to calm down. That's interesting. What makes you say that? Because you may have a whole list of things that you don't like about what they just said. But it ought to be interesting to you and me that someone that we like or respect feels differently than we do. That ought to be interesting. That ought to be something that gets our attention. So that's interesting. What makes you say that? Is a helpful phrase that we could use. And it's a good one if we have it in our muscle memory, so we don't have to wonder, what am I going to say to this person? Just have it ready. Another one that I observed from a friend one time that I just think is so wise, it's a way that I normally wouldn't speak, but I think is just so helpful. He said, well, I see that differently, but we don't have to speak anymore about it. I see that differently. I think that's a great way to respectfully abstain from talk. You know, one of the things that happens on the Supreme Court is that you have the majority opinion, and then for any of the judges that don't agree with the majority opinion, because they often aren't unanimous, often it's a split decision, they get to offer a dissenting opinion. And you could say, I have a dissenting opinion about that. And then you could share it, but you know what would be even better? If you've already shown them the respect of saying, that's interesting, what makes you say that? It would be good perhaps if you waited for them to ask why you disagree. That shows that they're actually interested and ready to hear it. If you instead try to say, well, that's all well and good, but let me tell you this, you have absolutely no reason to believe that they're ready to hear that or that they will listen. And what is going to be the result of that after a Thanksgiving dinner where voices are raised at a table so that people can be heard? You know, in the prayer of St. Francis, he says, Master, grant that I may seek not so much to be understood, but to understand. You know when we sing that in the song? To be understood as to understand. To be loved as to love with all my soul. I don't want to be so interested in being loved that I forget to love. Let me be more interested in loving and less interested in being loved. Let me be more interested in understanding and less interested in being understood. So perhaps we could just say, I see that differently. And let them show the interest, if they have it, in saying, okay, I'd like to hear what you have to say. If they don't say that, revert to rule number 1. Don't talk. Write it in your journal. If they're not ready to hear it, what's the point? The third thing that is part of my plan is once we have shared what it is that we disagree about, someone says, I believe this, and you say, I strongly believe the opposite. What do you do to let that person know that they are more important than an idea or a disagreement? I think it's important for us to learn these words. I value our relationship too much to damage it over this? What should we do to move forward now that we know that we disagree on this? I value you too much to be damaged by a disagreement. What should we do to show respect? How can we make room for each other's opinions, knowing that the other disagrees? What could be more beautiful than having a friend say to you, I don't see things the way that you do, but I would rather stay silent about my opinion than lose the opportunity to spend time with you. That's a beautiful thing. Isn't that what we all long for? So as we go off to our Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday celebrations with loved ones, as we continue to have phone calls about the latest mask mandate or election recount or economic policy decision or whatever else it is that we disagree with some friends and neighbors and family members about, let's remember to have a plan so that we don't end any conversation having said something we wish we hadn't, or having acted in a way that is not in alignment with our intentions for our relationships. Let's try not to talk unless we have to. When we do talk, let's plan to use words and phrases and questions that are helpful, that show interest, that allow the other person to emerge with something valuable for us to hear. And then once we've established that we've disagreed, to be able to say, I value you too much to allow our relationship to be damaged by disagreeing over this. How shall we move forward? How can we respect each other in the midst of our disagreement? Conflict is a part of life, but estrangement is a choice. Let's choose better than that, and let's find ways to be in connection with one another and in loving communication with the one who made us all. As we go forth into our celebrations ahead, may God bless you and each one of us